So, there are very few programs in college football that leave a conference and then have success immediately. There have been some. We also know that there have been some that changed conferences, and they have been a dud. My favorite team is an example. Oklahoma appears to be maybe in that group, although it's still too early to tell, even if it's just the full year and they go 4-8. There's some. A&M. The first year beat Alabama. Johnny Manziel won a Heisman Trophy. But there are schools like Oregon this year, schools that move into the conference, and not all of them, and very few of them have immediate success. And so that leads us to Ralph Rousseau and theathletic.com. And by the way, Paxton had sent me a note about Barry Switzer and how Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley did not want the SEC. I'll have that too. But this was an article from today already about USC and Oklahoma. Riley, who left, Venables, who replaced him, and both of them are right now really in a bad way.
You know, Oklahoma got so gutted by Riley leaving talent-wise. I mean, when you lose Caleb Williams, you lose all the guys they have, it's really hard to go back in and replace that. And they got really lucky with Dylan Gabriel. But then Dylan Gabriel leaves himself, and they have not – and they just couldn't replace it all. And they have, you know, both their best wide receivers have been out for most of the season, dealing with various injuries off and on. So they have no explosives in offense. It's weird to me that they don't have running back. And it's also weird to me on the Lincoln Riley side of things that he had all this stuff, all this momentum heading into USC, and then it just kind of hit the wall because of his complete ignorance of the defensive side of the ball. And now while they're better on that side of the ball this year, they're just not as talented as you think they would be. So the intersection of these two things happening, I mean, I guess basically they're both half a team because of that.
Maybe they should get back together.
Yeah.
I mean, when's the last time Lincoln Riley was at his best? So he was at Oklahoma, leaving in the middle of the night on a jet with his assistant coaches under the fog of night with, I think it was Eddie Radosevich and whatever other number of Sooner media that were creeping in the bushes, taking videos, the grainy videos of them, you know, loading their bags onto the cart or whatever it was. I remember that like it was yesterday. And, then on the flip side of things, it's been kind of a blur in a bad way these last couple of seasons. And I wish the memories were grainy like that old video, and I wish it was somewhat in the fog of night and not directly on my TV screen every Saturday, just how poor the performances have been throughout this entire season. So, yeah, they were a really good pairing, and I guess one of them thought that they, you know, needed to change of scenery. I said at the time, people can complain all they want to about Lincoln Riley. If you're complaining about the fashion in which he left, like, that's one thing, and I agree with that because he had a pretty beneficial relationship with Oklahoma. So to kind of do it the way that he did crossed people the wrong way, and rightfully so. But I did not blame the man at all for wanting to go live in Southern California and be a millionaire out in that area versus doing it in Norman, Oklahoma. Like, and sometimes you just want new challenges. Maybe he grew up a USC, like, there's all these things. Like, so I didn't blame him for leaving Oklahoma in general. The style of it was poorly done, but yeah, he was great there. They were great under him. The big complaint was, yeah, we've got all of these Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks every year. Every year we make the playoff or play for a big game, but we don't ever win that final big game, and we don't ever have, like, Heismans on defense. You know, like, that was the issue. You scored 60, but you gave up 61. So, yeah, I don't know what the point of this exercise is other than just piss me off as an Oklahoma fan of how good it was. But, yeah, they were better off together.
Yeah. That's an article from today. Paxton had sent me a note, and we'll get to more of this article in a moment, that Barry Switzer, who, of course, knows a little bit about Oklahoma football. Remember what
SEC legend Barry Switzer.
Yeah. Remember now what he said when the announcement was made, Oklahoma and Texas released, like, hey, okay, are you sure? He didn't know about what was going on. Not that he needed to, but he's pretty powerful, even has been forever since he coached. Lincoln Riley didn't know anything about what was going on. And I am probably in the minority when I say this, because I know it's easy to kick somebody when they're down or when it looks like they may have a little bit of like fleeing. I do not think that Lincoln Riley was afraid to compete in the SEC, because in the year that he left and during that time, Oklahoma was still good. So I'm against most everybody that like, he's the chicken, you know what, he wanted to leave. I don't think that. Because, well, and now guess what? He's in a conference that's still pretty good, deep now with what he had at the Pac-12, and now also adding in Ohio State, Penn State, et cetera, into that mix.
I mean, if you want to say he's a bad cook, that's fair. You got proof of that, but I've never seen real proof that he was scared of the SEC. I think that's what everybody who's an SEC fan likes to portray. I don't think the man was scared of the SEC, but, you know, the whole, he's in the Big Ten, but the twist on that is, well, he didn't know the Big Ten was going to turn into what it turned into. So you can still make the case that the angle that he was, you know, running away from competition was the correct one. But I don't personally believe that either. I mean, I can believe it to the extent of, not that he's scared of playing any of those teams, but like, what's my best shot to win a natty? Right. He took that, but he wasn't like, oh my God, I can't play Alabama every other year. I'm scared of that. Yeah, I don't buy that being scared. I buy that he tried to take the most enjoyable and easiest path to a national championship that he could, which was going to Southern California and playing out there. And it's so far not worked out his way. That's what I believe. All right, from Switzer in an interview with Dan Dockich, I think it's because Lincoln wasn't involved in the decision to go with the SEC. They didn't even ask him about it. And the next thing, he was like us. We heard about it too. And you know what? I do think, again, I think people like to get kicked when they're down. I don't know how many football coaches were actually given much heads up about leaving. You would think so, because that's where all the revenue is and the reason you would leave for another conference. Paul, Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma was fine. They were not fine. Craig's fine. They were good. And he would have had yet Caleb Williams for another year or two, and he would have had somebody else. What was the guy? Malachi Nelson or what? He would have been fine. Now, would they have ever been able to fix the defense? That remains to be seen. But, man, both programs are in really dire straits, because Oklahoma, we know what they're in and who they have to play. Ole Miss this week, and USC just lost to, who was it, Maryland? Yeah. Yeah, and now a lot of former players are barking a little bit.
Yeah, apparently, you know, it's not always – the grass isn't always greener. And Craig said what he thought was the easiest and most fun path to the college football playoff at USC. But, you know, and you got to be confident in your abilities, but USC has limitations in and of itself as a university. Otherwise, you know, it wouldn't be as hard as a job as it's been since Pete Carroll left. I mean, Lane Kiffin's failed there and got fired. Steve Sarkisian didn't make it because of personal reasons. Clay Helton didn't make it. I mean, so it's not like there's a bunch of coaches that haven't worked out there, right? So it's not an automatic thing at USC. And I know that you think, okay, we're going to bring this over here. Well, and I always just thought that the quarterbacks would just kind of roll to him, but yeah, it's not necessarily that. Like, the offensive line isn't very good. They don't have a good kicker. There's a lot of things going on at USC, which is something I didn't think would be a problem for him. But look, in the new era, you can't just he can't just pick up the phone and say, "Hi, prospect 1, USC," and them go, "Oh, cool, Southern California. I'll meet a lot of chicks and Will Ferrell will be there," and all that. Like, no, it's harder than that now.
I think even Switzer said, correct me if I'm wrong, when he was on with us even 2 or 3 years ago when we brought it up, is that he's not so sure they made the right decision, that Oklahoma made the right decision.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that's like, I didn't agree with it at the time, but like, here's the deal with that. You couldn't turn down all that money. Yeah. You can't turn down all that prestige and history and all that.
I mean, I'm saying he said he doesn't think they made the right decision football-wise.
No, I totally agree with that. But that's the thing, is like, you didn't have a choice really. Like, it was either chase the money or risk that Texas is going to get $50 million per year in just TV rights more than you get.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do? And here's the thing. You don't have the Texas alumni. You have more national championships. You have more Heisman. You have a lot more of the actual accolades, which sometimes people forget that in the conversation. They put Texas, like, above. And it's like, actually look at the things that are meaningful, and Oklahoma wins like nearly every category. If you want to start going, well, we got more Doak Walker, like 3, okay.
Or we win the overall series.
Let's do Heisman, 6-2 or 7-2, whatever. So 7 national titles to 4. You can do that all day. Big 12 titles, like, forget about it. But as good as they are as a program, they don't have, like, the hundreds of thousands of millionaires as alumni that the seemingly endless ATM of money that Texas has, and the hordes of gold they're sitting on. Like, Oklahoma's got limitations. And in this era where all of a sudden, you're paying players, they didn't have a choice. It was stay in the Big 12 and make the same money and be down tens of millions of dollars yearly just in TV alone to your arch rival and others who are climbing past you or are already above you, in like in Alabama's case, but sit and win a bunch of Big 12 titles and have an easier path but not make money. And this game, it always has and always will revolve around money. The decisions are made not on accolades half the time, but on money. So, it's a very easy thing for everybody to say, like, I thought that was a bad idea. I thought it was a bad idea. I said it on this show multiple times. I didn't like the idea of them joining the SEC from a winning and prestige standpoint, but they didn't join the SEC for necessarily the same amount of wins. They joined it for the prestige, but most of all, and a lot of it was the prestige, but as much as anything, they joined it for the money along with that prestige. So that was the cost of doing business. It's like you might have chopped off your legs at the knees in order to live in the penthouse and survive, quote unquote. But
Nebraska did the same thing.
Exactly. But they wouldn't change their mind.
No, they wouldn't.
No.
And somebody like, well, they should go back and join the Big 12. Why? They're getting $30 million, $40 million more than most anybody else, except now with the SEC.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've had that conversation with relatives about, and we all agree, like, we think their best bet was to stay in the Big 12, but it's just not a realistic conversation. I mean, it's just not. Everybody could see that coming. Hey, guys, guess what? It's going to be harder to go to Alabama and Ole Miss and Texas still and throw in A&M and throw in Georgia and throw in, on and on. Versus, doing what you've been doing and obviously dominating for a long time. Now, they didn't dominate their last couple of years in the league. They were still, but people act like they were like 6-6 or something. They were still pretty damn good. Like, they were still in the upper echelon. They just didn't win it their last couple of years. But if it was all about winning, then with the Southwestern Conference would still be alive, and the Big 8 would still be alive. So it's not about winning. It was about money and prestige, and they chased it for better or worse. For Texas, it looks like it's for the better. For Oklahoma, I'm sure in some ways it's better. The home games are more exciting, but no, the winning it definitely got dinged by that choice.
Oklahoma, when he was there, he won 12 the last 5 years, or the 5 years, 12-2, 12-2, 12-2, 9-2, 10-2. And remember, I think even in 21 when Baylor played Oklahoma State, that game with Oklahoma, Caleb Williams was bringing him back. That was an incredible game in Stillwater, I believe. And they almost got into that championship game, which would have been a rematch. But because of the way it ended, Baylor got to play Oklahoma State. 11-3 his first year at USC, then 8-5, now 3-4. And then that, of course, that's USC with Riley and now Venables. And what Oklahoma faces the rest of the year looks really, really, really tough.
Yeah, now they carry in an offense that is completely worthless, and they're going against Josh Heupel and Jeff Lebby, and I don't know, the offense they saw a lot in the Big 12 and actually thrived against and, had their own vision of under Riley. So, yeah, man, they risked a lot, but I think that you look 50 years down the road, they'll be glad they made the choice, even if it means that they've been passed up in some of the all-time categories, because they'll still be sitting on a fat stack of cash with no worries about their survivability, whereas, that's more of a question mark. If you had not made that choice, you getting passed up, that was a guarantee, if anything, that you would be getting passed up and lapped by some of your peers. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of a thing in some ways. But Riley, on the other hand, that's a whole different case, and that's like a separate conversation about what he's chasing and what he chose himself.
Okay, USC fit in the Pac-12. They were the Pac-12 for a long time. What he did in the Big 12, it fit. Does what he wants to do? Oregon runs that wide open offense, right? Doesn't what he's doing? There's a lot of Indiana's trying to do it.
They fit wherever they put them. Look, they fit in the ACC if you put them there schematically. Where they don't fit, and this is the thing that's hit both these teams that doesn't makes sense is neither of them have been able to acquire the talent they thought that they would. They are USC's slightly ahead of them, I guess, if you would say, in the recruiting wars, but not far. And neither of them are very talented teams right now. Like, Oklahoma's got a really good defense. USC's got some good parts, but would you look at these teams and go, holy cow, look at all these guys? That's what Oklahoma and USC at their peak used to have. You're like, holy cow, these rosters are loaded. They're not loaded anymore. They're not. And Brent Venables hasn't been able to get the guys in there. And that's what's ultimately going to put him under the gun. And Lincoln Riley, what's going to put him under the gun is, we were supposed to get the next Caleb Williams. It was supposed to be this train of quarterbacks that you had going at Oklahoma, and all these people were going to come wanting to play for the next Heisman Trophy winner. Well, that's not necessarily happening. And even when you had the Heisman Trophy winner, the defense was so terribly awful that his last year, you went 7-5. And the only reason you won 7 games is because he's superhuman. So outside of having that superhuman quarterback, what else can you do? Because now everybody's, it's not a level playing field, but it's not as unequal as it used to be when, if you can give $1 million and the other place can give $1 million, if they like that place better, they're going to go to that one. So it's a different world.
I'll tell you this, the same teams are going to end up playing for the national title in the end, because you could have the group of 5 school, and that's the how they position it, whether it's going to be a Boise State or a Memphis or a UNLV or whoever it might be. And then you're going to have the conference champions, and then you're going to have a lot of at-large. And we can discuss how many are going to be from what conference, whatever. But in the end, college football, this is the best. I am not so sure this hasn't been the best, most exciting, and in some cases topsy-turvy first 8 weeks of a college football season I could ever remember. And in the end, it's still going to be those who are bigger, better, faster, stronger, deeper, because you got to win more games now. 3 to win a national title, maybe 4. But has this not been maybe a little bit different than we thought? That it was just going to be the big boys separate even more? Maybe they do at the end, but during the regular season, this has been freaking hilarious. I love it. This has been great.
There's 2 reasons why. And I do think the big boys will separate, because I don't think everybody's built to go win 3-4 playoff games. That's what I just said, yeah. So I don't think Boise, as fun as they are as a story, I don't think they're built to go beat SMU in the first round and then go host Tennessee and then turn around and go beat Miami and then you go, that's just, I don't think that's realistic. I don't think very many teams are going to be built for that. So I think that's where you see the separation and this conversation changes. But the regular season, for as much as people said it wouldn't matter as much, it matters a great deal because of the expanded playoff, because more teams are alive, and also because Nick Saban's gone. That's what makes it refreshing and interesting, in my opinion at least. He's still around. He's still a commentator, but this just set in stone thing that was there for 20 plus years that never moves but an inch one way or the other, but it's always pretty much in the same spot that everybody's got to drive over, past, or whatever. It's inevitable. It's finally not inevitable. It's not immortal. It's not unbeatable. It's already taken a couple losses, and it might not even be all that relevant by the end of the year, and that's really refreshing. Yeah, I don't care how many fans Alabama has. It's really refreshing that there's not this same storyline of Saban and the Tide and everything that comes with that. Look, if it was still around, I wouldn't complain about it because it was a great thing in its own way. But the fact that it's out of the way and it's opened up the floodgates for more teams just in that conference to feel like they have a shot, much less the entire country, it's refreshing. It's refreshing to not see Saban on the Alabama sideline taking up their usual spot.
With all due respect to Vandy, and what a great win that was for the program and Pavia and all the stuff that's going on with Coach Lee, but that's the kind of game that Saban, after the win against Georgia or whoever it was, would have made his players feel like they were like garbage. That he would have been harder on them after that game, and you hear or you some trickling that maybe they were a little bit loose, and that's not the takeaway from Vanderbilt, because I'm not saying they wouldn't have won if Saban was there, but those are the games he didn't lose. Not after the first couple of years. Those are the games they didn't lose. So just a thought. There's a couple of comments on that from today in the article from our friend Ralph Rousseau.
Yeah, but I do think Saban being out of the out of the ecosystem now changes everything.
Would that be like if Mahomes retired?
Yes.
Yeah, because
which I'm almost rooting for at this point too, because the NFL is getting really boring.
Saban is a single. Like, there's not going to be another Saban. There's not another Brady. There's not another Mahomes. Like, they're singular talents. So you can't, like, nobody could go out, like, and they tried by hiring his assistants, but nobody can go out and be like, you're the next Nick Saban.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't work that way. You're Nick Saban now. Well, it's not like there's some kind of magical scepter that gets passed from the next Saban to the other one. So because he's out of it, there's going to create more parity in the SEC alone, because there's going to be somebody who steps into that, each year where maybe Alabama was. And there's more parity overall because there were a lot of guys who would go and sit and wait at Alabama because they want to play for Saban. But now we'll go other places because, like, well, Nick Saban's not there. I'm not going there. So
yeah, I think it's the winning. I think it's also just the fact that everybody looked to him as some sort of figurehead.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, what does Saban think? He was always this above standard of every other coach. Well, now it's an even playing field. No matter how hard Kirby Smart's trying to be the new Saban or whatever and be that guy that is like the beacon of coaching in college football, he's not that guy. Nobody's that guy right now. Nobody is. I don't know that anybody's even close to being that guy, because Kirby can win all he wants to, but I don't think people respect him the way they respect Saban. Not yet, at least. So they're not going to look at him like Kiffin's not going to look at him the same way he looked at respectfully at Saban. Even if he trolled him from time to time, they're not going to just sit and listen to Kirby Smart because, oh, well, you're the guy. You get to sit on the throne because you've won the most games here of late. That's not how it works. Saban had a different layer to him. And so, yeah, the guy who everybody looked to or everybody listened to or everybody waited to hear from is just on the sidelines like everybody else, commenting like everybody else. And it's interesting, but it's not like ruling the sport the way it felt like he was basically ruling the sport at the end. And that, to me, is the most refreshing thing. And the playoff, which I know we might be cursing in about a month because there's 7 SEC teams or, whatever and I'm obviously embellishing slightly on that, but the whole aspect of teams' ability to win 3 or 4 games, like, yeah, we might be poo-pooing the playoff in about a month, but I don't think it's taken anything away from the regular season. And if anything, it's made it more exciting to me this year.
Well, I mean, also the records of former Saban assistants that went on to coach everywhere else and play against him, and finally what Kirby got him. And not many others have done that along the way. It is Big 12 and women's basketball media day in Kansas City. Here is a picture of the men's coaches lined up. There's 16 of them. There's a lot there. There's you pick your favorite coach. He's in that picture. There's the Jerome Tang connection at K-State. Obviously, Scott Drew at Baylor. McCaslin at Texas Tech. There's Bill Self, KU, among many others. Jamie Dixon at TCU. I'm not going to go through them all, but that was today.
You were about to.
That's 4. It's one. If I don't mention all of them, and I'm done now with 4 because I was just told to be done, and I needed to be. Somebody, well, why didn't you mention?
Yeah, whatever, yeah.
So there you are. There's the snapshot. All of them want to kill each other, beat each other, and all of them are pretty damn good. Kendall will join us at 5:20 or so. We'll have a couple of other notes from what was said today at Big 12 Media Day.
Can you imagine somebody being so paranoid that if you just don't mention their coach you also don't mention like 11 others, that they somehow think that you not mentioning their guy specifically was that's to me just I think you need to log off and step away for a little while.
I do high school football a lot, and I every weekend have an honor roll in both the greater parts of East and Central Texas, and I will call and text and contact and email coaches, skim box scores, and I'll have sometimes 80 to 100 names. And it's the one person that will call or text me, and they usually text me, how come you didn't have? Because your coach didn't turn them in. And and I allow members of the site to also let me know about Chris Smith, who ran for 300 yards. It's really frustrating, but I just don't even okay. LSU and A&M. Garrett's not here today. He's going to be at the game on Saturday in College Station. How about this note? The times that both teams have been ranked inside the top 25, LSU is 8-0 in those meetings between the Tigers and the Aggies.
I'm not surprised about
this. And I don't know if
this.
that means how many were higher or lower. It doesn't matter. They're both ranked 8-0.
So, since this rivalry has gotten kicked up again, And I don't know if it's like a rivalry on any kind of
the
like
rivalry the SEC manufactured when A&M joined the conference. Yeah.
But
well, they used to play each other.
They used to play each other every year back in the day.
I'm kidding.
And then R.C. Slocum came along at A&M, and Curly Hallman came along at LSU, and LSU lost like 2 or 3 in a row to A&M. And they're like, look, this is supposed to be like a once in a while you get us when our quarterback is hurt kind of a thing. We don't like this new era where you win. And then it went away for a very long time. I think they played in a Cotton Bowl, and LSU won that game. You were on your deathbed, Smokey.
In 2010.
Yeah, you were very sick.
You got to pick and choose which one of those times I've been on my deathbed lately. Yeah.
That was the only time they played. And then the SEC, for A&M's benefit, and not necessarily for LSU's, because LSU already had theirs, was like, here's your biggest rival now. And A&M fans were kind of there for it, but LSU fans were like, yeah, we don't like you, but you're like fourth to us. But in those times, when LSU's ranked, LSU is clearly the better team than A&M, and it just has never worked out. We'll see what happens. Garrett's going to be there this weekend, as a matter of fact, at that game. So
I mentioned that.
Yeah. But sorry about that.
No, I said he's going to be covering the game in College Station.
But so it's we'll see. I think it'll be a really good game. I think they're both very equally matched. LSU is not they're not bursting with talent over A&M like they have been normally. And even in some of those years, recently SEC, A&M's gotten them because of whatever reasons. So we'll see what happens. I think it'll be a better game than most in the series have been.
Yeah, that game eventually changed how overtime is played because it what was it, 7 overtimes?
7 overtimes, yeah.
Crazy.
We were there that week after doing a high school game, and the grass in particularly between the 25 and the goal line.
Yeah, we did the game.
Was worn down a little bit.
Yep. That's when what was it? Our good friend James Fulbright was running back for Midway. Now, Baylor special teams. Brent Ingram, who's a part of he runs the media relations department for football, had this note out that last week against Texas Tech, they had the muff fumble on the kick return. That's just one of those big breaks. Cameron had the long punt return. They have been steady. They were really good last year, and look at what they're doing this year. And I've always said this, if you're average, you can be good with good special teams. If you're average and you don't have good special teams, then you're going to win 4 or 5 games. Baylor, despite last year's record, very highly rated in special teams, but look where they are this year, yet again, very high.
Yeah, they've got a decent kicker, and they have a very fantastic punter. Kicker's okay. Better than most.
I'm talking about return game too now.
Yeah, return game. And return game's been good. I mean, it's been good. Josh Cameron had the long return to the 1 the other night, and punt return, kick returns. Through varying guys over the last couple of years.
They ran one back against Colorado.
Yeah, has been the bright spot. So they've got that part down. Okay.
If only they could have kicked the field goal near the end of the game to put Colorado down by 10.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree on the kicker being even okay. There have been a couple of different guys, and they got to do way more to even earn okay to me. If you want to say average across college football, that's okay, then, by that definition, they're okay.
Kind of where I feel
then that's the baseline. They meet the baseline criteria, but in terms of actually being impactful, I think they've come up short a couple of occasions. And I think Dave Aranda has said as much about the kicking game being a disappointment. So, hopefully those guys can get their heads straight, because outside of that, they've obviously had some big plays, and that included last week. They just kicked Tech's ass in every way, shape, and form, special teams-wise. Not running multiple kicks back or anything, but just the sharpness of the way that they played and executed versus the way Texas Tech did not. That was a glaring win in Baylor's favor in that game, even if it wasn't head-to-head, coverage unit versus your punt, it was, but just in general, the total package. Baylor won that game in part due to special teams. Tech lost that game in part due to special teams. And so, it can win you games and it can lose you games, and that's an area where they've been sharp, but they'd be a game or two better if they were more consistent on the field goal kicking. So I'll continue to say that. I don't care if that hurts feelings, because you know what hurts feelings? People losing their jobs because you missed a field goal. Sorry, but that's part of the way that, not that it's all on you necessarily, but you win that Colorado game. How different is the whole entire conversation? Now, that wasn't also just kicking. make a stop on defense, do this or do that. But point being, they can be better there, and they need to be better there if they're going to win games down the stretch.
Guess who just joined our chat room? She's been here before. Andrea Cameron. Josh's proud mama. Woohoo! Special teams, baby. You and your son, and you know this, a walk-on to now who's the most reliable receiver that they have for Sawyer Robertson, and also has become really good when it comes to handling the punt returns and the big one that set them up at the doorstep against Texas Tech. So good to see you, Andrea. Appreciate your time and watching us on 365 Sports. Sam Houston State. Remember we had Casey Keeler on a couple of years ago. They were starting the transition to try to get to FBS, and there's a waiting period. Tarleton State's had to deal with that a little bit with their and Sam Houston State. And Casey Keeler, they basically sat and redshirted a bunch of their best players, knowing they would probably lose games so that they would be available when they got to this level. And they won last night. It wasn't pretty. Beat Florida International at 10-7. Casey Keeler's going to join us in the next segment. They're bowl-bound in their first year in FBS. And our good friend, Kavion Gaither, what a game he had. 7 tackles, picked off the first pass of the game. Young man from Connolly High School, 2-5, 10 minutes from here. Had a tackle behind the line of scrimmage, also had a quarterback pressure, and had a batted pass too. And it was great to see him play in a big moment for Sam Houston State.
Yeah, I was hoping to get the video for everybody to see. Couldn't find a good copy of it that we had the rights to use. But KG is a great kid, and he's a really good football player. And happy to see that moment for him early in the game. And we got Casey Keeler here in a few minutes. I want to know the difference between stress of a 10-7 game and a 45-42 game. Would you rather be a 10-7 game, knowing that, you know,
as a fan, give me 45-42 all day long. Yeah.
As a coach, would you rather it be a defensive
It all depends.
struggle?
Are you a defensive-minded coach or an offensive-minded coach?
But if you know you only really need to get one score as opposed to in a 45-42 game, you're going, how many touchdowns do we have to score to make sure we win this thing?
Yeah. No,
do we have enough time to score that many touchdowns? As where you're in a one-score, like, low-score game, you're like, well, we have enough time to get a field goal. That's all we really need. So that I just wonder.
Yeah, I don't like football at 0-0 at halftime. I don't care what it's the freaking steel curtain versus the doomsday defense. Like, I mean, it better be something pretty freaking special to be 0-0 at halftime and me enjoy that in any way. But I also don't need the 60 versus 58, final score either. But
if you're going to say 60-58, you have to say it right.
61-58.
Yeah, okay.
That's so. Win a game since then, and then we can still use that. Like, for God's sakes. Like, I mean, it was a great moment. I was there. It was very cool. It was 10 years ago. You haven't won a game against them but one time since.
Well, they were celebrating 10 years ago.
Yeah, but you're 1-9 since then, so it's not like as cool as it could be.
Yeah.
Because TCU's had like 3 of those in the span of that time period. So yeah, I'm over that at this point until you add something of substance, on top of that. But yeah, I mean, that's great for Sam Houston. To be bowl eligible now as an FBS team is part of the grand scheme, the grand plan of when you decided to make that transition. And so that's a big accomplishment. And you ruined the Vice uniforms night for FIU as well. You ruined Pitbull Stadium's atmosphere with that win. So mission accomplished, going on the road and making some history. So good for the Bearcats.
Good luck again as they keep on. They're not done. They're wanting to win more, and we'll have Casey Keeler. In fact, we'll break for that. The